Hi, I am an artist who focuses on a creepy art style. I am also a cosplayer. I make much as possible by myself. I have experience in crafting and painting. And over many years I made probably 8 Iron Man helmets. My big next challenge is designing and making a cosplay from scratch. But let's practice first and modify this Iron Man helmet. I will show you how I turned this concept art into a final product. In this video I will focus more on the paint job and thoughts behind it. The base is 3D printed, I just printed the pieces every now and then. I did not film because YouTube is already overflowing with these kinds of tutorials. But not how to paint a custom helmet like I do, and do a pretty believable metal effect. But if you want to see a full tutorial of myself from start to finish, let me know in the comments down below. So what I did off screen is a lot of filling, sanding and priming until I had a smooth enough finish to start with. I started with a metal looking part. I wanted to try a few techniques that I never tried before. But I never had a better result than this. The first thing that you have to do is make the piece as smooth as possible and paint it with a high gloss paint. You will also need makeup sponges. They are firm, reusable and great for blending. What you will need as well is high gloss varnish, and the secret sauce of all this is the graphite powder. It's the same stuff as in your pencil, it's made of graphite. It is metallic and extremely fine. Wear gloves, keep in your mind it is even worse than glitter to clean up. So be careful with this stuff. And the last thing you will need is a good tempo. You have to act really fast for this technique. I will explain how you do it. First you dip the graphite powder with a sponge on your object. Dab it, smear it, just make it a smooth thin layer. You want a thin coat, don't overdo it, we will do a lot of layers and it will be all fine. So when layer 1 is done, you have to move to another location. I moved to my DIY painting booth, but this can also be a cardboard or outside or doesn't really matter. And now you will have to give it a light coat of spray varnish. Every spot should be slightly covered. And here comes the tricky part. You have to wait the perfect amount of time. I cannot predict how fast your varnish will dry, but after just a few minutes, your layer should look kinda and feel sticky. Not just painted wet, not dry, just a sticky mess. In this layer you will be able to dip more graphite powder. And you can repeat these steps as many times as you like. I did about 3 layers and I had a complete coverage. When it's done, you don't have to overdo it because that's just a waste. If you want to try this by yourself, I recommend doing all the metal parts in one go. At the end, give it a few layers of varnish as a protective coating with the right drying time. When everything was dry, I tried to polish it. I bought some polishing pads for my sander, it's like a big soft sponge. I do have some car polish gels that I applied. Oh, and I didn't read the package, so I chemically burnt myself, so be careful with that. This is before I polished the helmet. And this is after I polished it. I see difference, so I'm glad. It's not like a mirror or anything, but we have to weather it afterwards anyway, and it looks like metal and I'm super happy with the results. Maybe with more quality varnish and more quality tools you can make it look like a mirror, but I'm not going for that, at least not now. The metal part is done. I will tape it carefully with painter's tape and continue with the rest of the paint job. I gave the helmet a few coatings of matte black spray. In my design, the back of the helmet is white, what will give me the opportunity to do some art on it with black. I took a white spray paint and gave it a subtle, awesome effect. Later I used a piece of cardboard to protect the top from the helmet from overspray. After that I tried to do an experiment. Let's try the graphite trick with matte black paint and with matte varnish. I did this and it doesn't look like a mirror, but it looks more raw industrial metal. A really cool and more aggressive looking effect. An awesome contrast for the shiny paint graphic thing. Next up is the rust effect on the side. I changed the texture by mixing sand with paint and applied a thick coat of paint over the parts I want to modify. After that, apply all kind of shades, brown, mix and dip, and just try something until you're satisfied with the mix of browns until it looks like rust. My concept art the helmet has a lot of battle damage. I also had some etched in art on the side. It says Frooz, my artist name. Also some commenting of important kills that happened. This is the backstory that I figured out. It really makes it feel alive and real. We look at it and just start to fantasize and think what would have happened to cause that. We create a story of our own. It makes the character oh so real. And for weathering I used some black shoe polish. We want to make the helmet the most dirty at the parts that would get the most dirty and damage. And that would be the dents and the edges. Apply it firmly, really get in there and wipe the right amount of shoe polish off the surface with a rag. Go back and forward until you are happy with the result. And always have a story in mind. I think the edges of the faceplate would be a little bit more worn off because all the dirt that can get between the gap. And maybe he got shot on one side of the helmet so it's more black of an explosion. And the best details are the one you don't really notice in first glance. It's hard to explain, but and while I was at it, I did some details with graphite powder. I brushed those on the edges. The edges would wear down the quickest, so let's simulate the metal from underneath peeking through. To finish it up, I used various of colors of paint and add tiny details in the artwork on the back. I used a copper color in the rust to make the artwork more pop. I also used white paint marker. This is not an art marker but one for car tires. It was just cheaper and it's practically the same. I used it for years and years. One of the last steps I had to do are the blood splashes. I did this outside because I didn't want to make a mess inside. And of course it got darker faster than I expected.
Yeah.
I was able to varnish it so it's protected. And the last thing we have to do are the lenses. I wanted to go for red, but the effect wasn't the effect I wanted. Then I went for these cosplay lights. I heated and bent them so they would fit properly, but look at this. It barely lights up and this is in the dark. In clear daylight you can't see it and it just sucks. I don't like it. I gave myself a few days to think and I figured out black lenses would be better. Just dark and soulless. So I grabbed this transparent candy container. I grabbed some window darkener foil for cars on it and I glued it in place. It was a long and hard project, but I can proudly announce this is the best helmet I have ever made. And this is the only helmet in the entire world that looks like this. I present to you Iron Man as the anti-hero by Frooz. I hope this tutorial was helpful, inspiring and entertaining. Thank you for watching and more will follow.